So we've now moved out of John chapter 8, and we're into a new setting. Jesus is no longer teaching. We have him now performing a miracle. And I think it's kind of interesting how it happened. And we'll talk a little bit about how it happened. But it's interesting to me how three different passages from different parts of the Bible have converged to talk about the same thing. In Revelation, which Jennifer read, we saw God on his throne and people surrounded by him, and through their worship, God is receiving glory. In fact, they are reflecting the glory that he already has. In 1 John chapter 3, we find out that we are children of God. And as children of God, we are supposed to live in such a way that reflects God's glory. And then here in John chapter 9, we find out that this man was born blind for God's glory. So as I was reading these passages this week and reflecting on it, I began to think about the Westminster Catechism. And I don't know if any of you have ever even heard of the Westminster Catechism. The Westminster Catechism is part of the Presbyterian Church's teaching. And during the Reformation, John Knox from Scotland wrote the Westminster Catechism as part of the Reformation that occurred within the Anglican Church, because there was a lot of struggling going on in England in particular, because their Reformation was different from other parts of Europe. In other parts of Europe, it was primarily a theological Reformation that occurred, whereas in England, it was political. Henry VIII decided that he wanted to divorce a woman and marry another, and the Pope wouldn't let that happen. And so he decided that he would start his own church. And he used the excuse and the leverage of the Reformation that was occurring in Germany and other parts of Europe in order to make that happen. So we really had an Anglican church that was still very Catholic, just minus the Pope. And over the course of the next 100 years or so, different kings would come under the influence of different biblical teachers, and you might have one king who was very Catholic, and you might have another king that was very Protestant. And of course, you can't just be the king, you have to persecute everybody else. And so a lot of persecution would happen, going back and forth, and finally things started to settle down as there became different churches within England. And part of it was the Presbyterian Church, which broke off, and they became reformed in their doctrine. And the very first question that they asked in their catechism is, what is the chief end of man? Which is a good question. Why do we exist? What is the main purpose of our existence? Do we know the answer? Any ideas? Glorify God? Okay, I thought somebody would say, because we got to back the Packers. No? Okay. You are correct. Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. So when we think about glorifying God, what does that mean? And how do we come to the place that we can enjoy God forever? Well, I look at the three passages before us, and I see that we have to find God in the common things. And the most common thing that is in our lives, honestly, is trouble. God exists in the midst of our troubles. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And in this particular case, we had a man who was born blind. And he had no way of sustaining himself except to sit against a wall with a hat in front of him and hope that somebody would feel compassion and drop a coin or two in. That was his life right up until this point. And people ask, well, why did this happen to him? He must have been a really bad person. Well, I suppose if he was born blind, he must have been really bad. He must have done some horrible things in that womb, right? Well, no. And his parents? Well, I suppose it is true. The sins of the parents do fall upon the children, especially, for instance, if a woman is drinking alcohol while she's pregnant or taking drugs that she shouldn't be taking. Children can become heroin addicts, even from the womb. So it is possible that somebody's sin could cause somebody else's suffering. We know that we all suffer from other people treating us badly. But Jesus is saying in this particular case, there may be sin around, but that's not why this is here. This is happening for God's glory. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. That's in verse 3. In Psalm 103, verses 2 through 5, we receive a blessing that the psalmist gives to God. He says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. He forgives all your iniquities. He heals all your diseases. He redeems your life from destruction. He crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies. He satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles." So the psalmist is saying, I love the Lord because he hears my voice. Bless the Lord. He heals my sins, or he forgives my sins. He heals my diseases. He crowns me with glory. He gives me everything that I need in my life, and so I'm going to bless him. Well, it doesn't always work that way, does it? When we do get the answers to prayer, we should give God glory. But it doesn't always happen that way. There's a story in Daniel 3 which talks about 3 young men who were given a choice. Either worship a false god or die. And the king, Nebuchadnezzar, gave them several opportunities to recant and to give their lives over to this false god. And here's what their answer was. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case that we will die, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up." So, we all know the story. We know that 3 men went into the fiery furnace, and 3 men came out unscathed. But they did not know that would be the outcome when they went into the fire. They fully expected that they could be fried, that they could burn right up. We don't know the outcome either. Difficult times come our way, and we're faced with tough choices. And sometimes we lose our jobs, sometimes we lose a marriage, sometimes we lose our children, sometimes our neighbors go against us. We must not fear. As Martin Luther wrote in his hymn, "We will not fear, for God has willed his truth to triumph through us." There are 2 men in Acts 12 that appear. One is Peter, and the other is James. Peter is found in jail because James was found dead. Both men were arrested because of their testimony for Jesus Christ. And we studied that story a couple of years ago, and we found how an angel miraculously came and led Peter out of the jail. James didn't get the same treatment. James was just as much of a man as Peter was. He had just as much faith. He had just as much faithfulness. Yet he died. We can find God in our circumstances no matter what the outcome is. God wants us to be glorifying him no matter what. And so we can find God in our troubles, not only as we escape them.